Good morning. Today, a fall in demand for whisky hits Maltsters, and we hear from our BBC Food and Farming Award winners.
Complete shock, and we're absolutely delighted. I think we're still buzzing.
Yeah.
Adrenaline, I think.
I think my heart's still racing, to be honest.
More from Charlie and Angus of the Free Company later. First, new rules on the size of oysters that can be landed on the River Fal have been introduced, part of a bid to protect future stocks of the shellfish. It's the first change in regulation on the size of native oysters dredged from the Fal in 100 years. Known for only using sails and oars to harvest, the oyster fleet has worked in a traditional way for generations, and there are mixed feelings about the change. With the season underway, BBC Radio Cornwall's Helen Munro-Berry has been speaking to fishermen and traders about how the changes are measuring up.
This is the first year in which new measuring gauges, approved by the government, will ensure that all oysters harvested will be over a certain size.
A minimum landing size is a critical thing. We have an oyster gauge here, a couple of them. They're circular, and the important thing about a circular device is to measure the width of something. So this is a 1924 Truro Corporation oyster gauge, 2 inches and 5/8, lovely brass. And then this is the new 72mm gauge.
The oysterman and merchant Chris Ranger championed the change.
If the habitat reproduces and we don't keep taking the little ones, we'll end up with more mediums, and we can still fill the same amount of buckets with less oysters and get the same money, and there's more left to reproduce for next year.
The Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs have said that increasing the minimum landing size of Fal oysters will improve the long-term sustainability of the native oyster population. But there are mixed feelings within the industry. Les Angels has been an oyster fisherman for 60 years and isn't keen on the change.
Yeah, I didn't really agree with it. It's been 100 years the other way, and I've always used the other size, but the youngsters and other ones thought the size should go up. They think it's for conservation, but I don't got much on it.
Les's son, Dan Angels, thinks it's too early to tell if there will be a good thing or not.
There's not a lot in it, but you can notice it when you're picking them out. We'll catch less, but it could be better for the future. I don't know. I couldn't tell you until a couple of years' time.
Giles Gilbert at Pisk Fishmongers and Restaurant in Falmouth is more convinced.
Regulations acknowledging that minimum size going up to 72 is brilliant. It means that the oysters have longer to breed, so it means that the smaller oysters will have more time in the water, and that should support a growing population of oysters.
Giles Gilbert there. Now to farming in Brazil. All this week we're considering farming across the world as COP30 continues. Thales Mendonça farms in the south of Brazil and is at COP. He says it's important for farmers to be there to push for financing for agriculture which can help combat climate change. He is a first-generation farmer running a small family farm producing organic mushrooms on wood logs, as he explained to Anna Hill.
We had many resources, we had many wood available, and no money coming from this wood because we were not being recognized by the government or by the society for environmental services. So those trees, we knew that they were working for the environmental perspective, but in the end of the month, our bank account was not improving. So we saw an opportunity to generate some income growing mushroom on the wood log.
And does Brazil then have a grant or a subsidy scheme for farmers at all?
Brazil doesn't have subsidy mechanisms like European Union has, but we do have financial support through special credit lines and loan programs from the federal government. When you are proposing work through agroecology, being a family farmer, and working with agroforestry, you can access some credit with less than 2% interest rate a year. It's nothing, it's less than the inflation, and you get like 10 years to pay, and the first year you don't have to pay anything. They give like a bit of oxygen to you to start developing the work.
And why is it important for you to actually be at COP?
I feel that this COP in Brazil, it's been different to really bring the global actors through the heart of the Amazon, and we as a farmers being there and be recognized as the key actors for the climate crisis. We are also solutions there, because the agriculture sector in Brazil is responsible for more than 70% of the greenhouse gases, and worldwide is more than 30%. So we are really pushing to be there to raise our voices, also to have direct access to climate finance, because the climate finance must be designed and reshaped, including the family farmers.
How do you get your voice heard?
Indeed, this COP has been promoted by this other part of our agriculture sector, the industrial agriculture, we call it. They have much more money and resources to position themselves, to do the proper advocacy, the lobby with the Congress, with the leaders. But being part of networks nationally and internationally enable us to access strategic people, to influence, to lobby for our agenda. But still, like, we are ants together with elephants, but we are still there because collectively the ants, they make a huge impact.
Thales Mendonça from Brazil. A decline in demand for whisky is being blamed for the closure and suspension of Scottish malting plants, something which farmers fear will also mean a decline in demand for barley. Maltsters process barley so it can be used in distilleries or brewing. Diageo has announced that its plant near Elgin will be closed until at least July next year, and another company, Baird, says it will close one of its plants. NFU Scotland describes the situation as concerning, particularly as it comes after a tough year when the weather affected both the yield and quality of barley crops. Dr. Julian South, Executive Director of the Maltsters Association of Great Britain, which represents maltsters.
I don't think this is a long-term worry. It's a short-term correction at the moment in time. I mean, distillers have been gearing up with producing lots of spirit in the last couple of years, and some warehouses are pretty full of spirit. The long-term trend within distilling is growth. And you do see ups and downs in the distilling market, because when you make whiskey, you put it in a warehouse and you store it for up to 10 years or more. So it's quite a long process, but quite different from the brewing industry.
Although these companies are saying there's a decline in demand for whiskey, which is why they're doing this.
Well, there are challenges ahead. I mean, things like the US tariffs have created problems. Ukraine war, so there are no longer exports to Russia. So there is turbulence in the market. And of course, we know that as well, that there's an economic sort of challenge in the UK.
Farmers are surely right to be worried, because fewer plants will mean less demand, won't it?
Well, there are not fewer distilling plants. In fact, there's something over 150 distilleries now in Scotland and a reasonable number in England. And in terms of malting capacity, so we've lost a bit of malting capacity. But if you look at the growth in the last few years, something like 124,000 tonnes of extra capacity has been added to existing malting plants. So that's actually an increase in capacity.
What percentage of the barley that is malted by your members is grown here in the UK?
Over 99%. Only a very small quantity comes from overseas, and that's usually varieties which we don't actually grow in the UK.
This year has been difficult because of the weather, which has had a knock-on effect. Has that made things harder for maltsters?
It has. I mean, maltsters have had to deal with a lot of crop which has not been within specifications. And in addition, there have been sort of high nitrogen barleys as well. But overall, there's been a reasonably sufficient 2025 crop.
What do they do with the stuff that doesn't make it?
So in a typical year, we might screen out 5% or slightly more of small grains. But in this year, we've had to screen out up to 20%. That material is pelleted along with other maltings, co-products to produce and goes into the animal feed stream.
So if you're a farmer in Scotland, then it's still worth planting barley this year for you?
Absolutely. It's really a case of glass half full, glass half empty. I mean, if you look at the quantity that will be required for next year, so yes, it will be less, but there's still a substantial quantity of barley.
Dr. Julian South. And finally, the BBC Food and Farming Awards ceremony took place here in Bristol on Tuesday night, a glittering occasion with 3 strong finalists in our Farming Today and the Archers Farming for the Future category. Archers actor Mally Harris and I visited all 3: Grazing Management, who manage conservation grazing in Herefordshire, The Free Company, a farm and restaurant on a former dairy farm near Edinburgh, and Hugh Ragham, who grows hemp in Northumberland. Congratulations to all those brilliant people doing brilliant things. But our winners of the Farming Today and the Archers Farming for the Future Award are...
The Free Company.
Congratulations. What was your reaction when Mally read out your name?
Complete shock, and I mean, absolutely delighted. I think we're still buzzing.
Yeah.
Adrenaline, I think.
I think my heart's still racing, to be honest. It needs to come down from our high.
You took on a really difficult farm from your parents, and you also took on the debt. At that beginning point, did you realise you had to completely change it?
At the very beginning, it almost felt like it was gone already, and it felt like we had nothing to lose. If you gave it a shot, at least if it didn't work, we could put our hands up and say we tried.
But I think we also knew when we started, whilst we were right at the bottom, the only way was up, but we knew we weren't going to continue farming in the way that it had been done before, and it was going to change, and it was going to be sustainable. We need to make it resilient, we need to make it diverse, and not just what we're farming, but the business as well.
It's the Farming for the Future Award. What do you think of the lessons you've learned that other farmers can take something from?
I think the thing we've realised more and more is about stacking enterprises across the farm, trying to spread your risks and really invest in your team who are on the farm. Invest in the team and build the most diverse, passionate and committed team that you possibly can, who can come to these awards, celebrate with you. They're upstairs, and also, when it is tough, they'll keep on working really hard.
And to add to that, to be really critical of each enterprise. I think for us it's really important that each enterprise stacks up on its own 2 feet. We don't have one enterprise that supports another. Okay, maybe in a bad year when one enterprise fails, you can rely on that, but the actual most important thing is setting out to make sure that they do all support themselves. I think is really crucial.
That must be hard, though, when you've got something you really want to work and it just doesn't, and you have to let it go.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people talk about farming, it's not a business, it's a lifestyle. And I think, there are aspects that it brings in this incredible lifestyle, but if it's not working, sometimes you do have to make those really, really hard decisions to stop doing that and to change it and to try something else.
Yeah, and I think also, even to our extent, whilst we're growing and we've been building our own capital base to be able to continue developing things on the farm, there are aspects of our business that we are more interested in than others, but have much longer returns on. Therefore, we've had to invest in other things. Maybe it's some more non-farming enterprises that are not as quick return to enable us to develop our farming enterprises ahead of that. And that, an example of that is maybe focusing on private events ahead of our suckler herd of cattle. Now, eight years down the line, we're seeing some of the benefits of that.
Charlie and Angus Buchanan-Smith from The Free Company. Congratulations to them. More from the awards ceremony on Friday's food programme. Start thinking now about who you'll nominate next year. That's it from us. I'm Charlotte Smith. The producer is Rebecca Rooney, and Farming Today is a BBC